We will now convene the Committee on House Administration to continue the hearing on committee funding for the 113th Congress. A quorum is present, so we may proceed. And the committee now welcomes Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Johnson on the Committee on Science and Space and Technology. The official reporter will please enter a page break. We have a new section. Tracing back to the late 1950s and the space race, this Committee on Science, Space, Technology has had a very important history. Its jurisdiction extends over all energy research and development, all federally owned or operated non-military energy laboratories, astronautical research and development, civil aviation research and development, environmental research and development, the commercial application of energy technology, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and the National Science Foundation, and the National Weather Service. Among its priorities for the 113th are to oversee the Department of Energy's Office of Science, its Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, and the DOE's loan program, guarantee programs, its contract management systems, NASA's continuing mission and efforts, and our nation's nuclear research and development. So this morning, the committee is proud to have before it Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Johnson. And we appreciate you both coming. The committee has had an opportunity to already evaluate the materials that you have sent us, and we're looking at them very seriously, and we certainly appreciate both of you being in attendance today, and the chair recognizes Chairman Smith for his testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Miller, Ranking Member Brady, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the Science, Space, and Technologies budget for the 113th Congress. In this economy, all Americans are forced to tighten their belts and do more with less. This is something that the Science Committee has been doing for many years. The committee's budget has been cut much more than the typical House committee over the last 2 years. Since 2010, our budget has been reduced by 16.4%. Other committees have averaged 11.8%. And there's a chart attached to my opening statement if you'll want to take a look at that. All we ask for today, that is it. And that's the chart that shows other committees have averaged 16%, and we've been cut 16%, other committees have averaged 11%. All we ask for today is fairness. Our request for 2013 sets the Science Committee's funding at a level that would treat it like other House committees. Even at this level, the committee would operate in 2013 with a smaller budget than it did in 2005. As the chart shows, the Science Committee's budget was cut 16.4% over the last 2 years. On average, other committees were cut 11.8%. So the Science Committee was cut 4.6% more than the average of other committees. I am a fiscal conservative, but I also believe in fairness, and I know members of this committee share that sentiment. The Science Committee's jurisdiction is broad and diverse, covering federal research and development activities in many different agencies. We oversee all or part of NASA, Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, FAA, and FEMA. America's economy is driven by innovation and technological advancements, and the purpose of the Science Committee is to encourage the R&D that leads to new innovations and job creation. This is America's future. To perform effective and efficient oversight and develop legislative policy direction, we must ensure that staffs on both sides of the aisle are equipped with the technical expertise necessary to handle this diverse jurisdiction. We are also endeavoring to revitalize the Science Committee and have taken several steps to increase the pace of our activities. We split the Energy and Environment Subcommittee into 2 separate subcommittees because each subject deserves more attention. So we now have 6 subcommittees instead of 5. The staff is working hard, but to be more effective, we will need to be treated like other committees. The Science Committee also will review major programs that require legislative authorization. It has been 3 years since the committee reauthorized NASA, the National Science Foundation, STEM education, and energy research and development programs, and we aim to reauthorize all of those this year. We also will be reauthorizing a cybersecurity research and development program for the first time in 11 years. I expect that there will be at least twice as many hearings in this Congress as in the last Congress, so we will be more than busy. The Science Committee ensures that taxpayers and the American people receive a strong return on their investments. Again, as a matter of fairness, our request before you for $6.3 million sets the Science Committee's funding at a level for it to be treated like other House committees. Thank you for your time and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chairman. And the chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Texas, Ranking Member Johnson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I just got this email, which I'll read before my remarks. The greatest difference in our generation may not be between liberals and conservatives, but between the pioneers of the future and prisoners of the past. Let me explain. Across America and around the world, there are countless pioneers inventing the future, and many of their developments will change our lives. That is really the mission of our committee. That's from Newt Gingrich. Good morning, and let me thank you for the opportunity to speak today. That just come in, and it intrigued me. Chairman Smith has already presented an overview of our committee's finances, so I will just make a few remarks. As the chairman has already noted, we have to absorb a disproportionate cut relative to other committees in the 112th Congress. The research of that 16.4% reduction in our budget since 2010 was to force us to defer filling several staff slots as well as to cut salaries in most of the staff who were retained for the 111th Congress. We also had to significantly limit committee oversight traveled by members and staff. So as we start the 113th Congress, Chairman Smith and I are committed to having the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology be active on the many important oversight and legislative matters within our jurisdiction. That jurisdiction is very broad and complex, ranging from areas as different as nanotechnology, space exploration, manufacturing technology, energy innovation, and STEM education, just to name a few. Attracting and retaining staff with the required experience and skills, as well as providing opportunities for members to visit the laboratories and other R&D organizations and talk to their personnel requires resources, and the level of cuts we have already absorbed has complicated these efforts. I would argue that the sequestration cuts that have now gone into effect will have impacts on our agencies that will only increase our oversight responsibilities, not diminish them. In addition, our committee will be undertaking a number of major legislative reauthorizations in the 113th Congress, including COMPETES and NASA, as well as a number of energy R&D programs. In closing, the Committee of Science, Space, and Technology will have an important role in determining policies that will impact the future of both our economy and our quality of life. While I think resources beyond those contained in the chairman's request are warranted to enable us to do our jobs effectively, I would request that at a minimum the committee grant us the funding level requested in the chairman's testimony. I thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
We thank you both very much for your testimony. And you do have an incredible amount of challenges before you as you go into the 113th. As the Chairman Smith has laid out, I was sort of trying to take some notes on all of these various things you're going to be reauthorizing here. And that is a very high level of activity. Yeah. And I was also looking at your some of the field hearings that you're looking at going to. And certainly going to Marshall's or Marshall Space Flight Center, Kennedy Space Center, et cetera, are all things that is important, particularly with what's happening with the transition in NASA, with the space program going to Orion, and some of these various kinds of things that are happening there, I think are important for the committee as well. One thing I would, I don't know if I'm asking particularly a question or perhaps just making you an offer here. Mm-hmm. Our committee is really wanting to try to assist all the various committees as you utilize new technology for various kinds of things so you don't have duplicative kinds of activities happening. And for instance, some of the enterprise solutions that this committee has been very proactive on, and we really want to ratchet that up as we go forward here, being able to resource the various committees in ways that we might be able to, like using the cloud computing. Right. Even some of the, I was trying to look through some of the information that you provided us about, whether it's web development or various things like that. I guess I would just say that our staff wants to assist in any way that you think is appropriate for us to do so to help you.
Okay.
You know, subscription services. I know it sounds small, but I mean the ability to save $5,000-$10,000, et cetera, helps you a bit with some of your staffing, and all of that can add up, I think, a bit. But certainly with the IT, might be another area to look at as well.
Madam Chair, I actually have a couple of suggestions in that area you might expect from the Science and Technology Committee.
Yeah.
One is a house-wide software licenses for Adobe Professional would be very useful and likely to save the taxpayer considerable funds when looking at the cost relative to the numerous purchases of software by other committees. And then a license for the Citrix solution the committee has already implemented could potentially provide benefits we see in the solution to the entire House. So those are two areas where I think other committees and the House itself would save. On the Citrix, let me go into a little bit more detail there. The Citrix system is what allows remote access by staff, particularly maybe on occasions like today when they need to ensure continuity of operations and they can't be in their offices, or when we have a disaster recovery, something like that. So that system could help, as well as the Adobe Professional. So those would be two areas that I think would reap savings across the board.
I see my staff back here busily taking notes while you're mentioning those, so we appreciate that, that input.
And we hope that you would credit the committee's budget with any savings that accrued.
We'll take that under advisement. But we're really trying to think about how we can improve the Wi-Fi service on the Hill. I mean, as you go to a lot of paperless kinds of hearings and all of that, so that people can use their iPads instead. And there's just a lot of things that, you know, we've always done it this way, but time to step it up here a bit, right? And so I just mentioned that as well. This time, I would recognize our ranking member Brady for his questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only question would be, in this time of difficulty with the cuts that we have and that you had and the cuts that you may be expecting, do you, either one of you, both of you, have problems finding quality people? And probably most important, keeping the quality people with the institutional knowledge that you have coming in with their services. They can make more money on the outside, and now they're being asked to take another cut.
Right. Congressman Brady, I couldn't have asked for a better question about trying to find quality people, because we have been somewhat hampered in our ability to attract, for instance, subcommittee staff directors to join us, because we haven't been able to necessarily equal the salaries that they're being paid in the private sector. So that is one of the reasons why I hope that we are granted some deference on the budget, so that we can make offers to individuals and so that they will be able to consider working on the Hill and working for our committee. We have a number of openings, and unfortunately we are making offers to individuals and asking them to take a pay cut, and that is not conducive to attracting the best individuals necessarily. So it all comes back to the budget, and if we have enough to pay what's comparable in the private sector, we should be able to attract those individuals. But that's a serious concern.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you for your testimony.
I appreciate your talking about reauthorizing NASA, and you know, it's really I think it's an unfortunate thing that our space program is not moving forward as I think many would like it to be. And I certainly see the private sector getting much more involved, and that's fine. But when you see China and Russia and others taking off like this, reauthorizing NASA is very important. I just have to tell you one personal reason. I've always been sort of a space nut, because my dad actually was an aeronautical engineer. He's passed on now, but he worked with Wernher von Braun at Redstone. And when we were kids, you know, I mean, here he was, sort of a rocket scientist, and he used to come home very upset sometimes because he'd say, now the government is getting involved in the space program, and we no longer can set off a rocket till the weight of the paperwork equals the weight of the rocket. You know, we used to be able to just do what we wanted, but now the government's involved in stopping our creativity. But really, there has been such a tremendous amount of spin-off. We're talking about technology, and whether it's your GPS, just getting here to work this morning or whatever, these are all spin-offs of the space program. Incredible amounts of stride that the taxpayers get in an indirect way from the space program. So I think it's very important your committee is reauthorizing NASA.
Madam Chair, if we reauthorize that will be the first time in 3 years. It's a $17 billion reauthorization, And I hope this year it will be a bipartisan effort as well. Congresswoman Lofgren sits on the committee too. And I'm certainly pleased to hear you're sympathetic to aeronautical engineers. We'll put more of those in our budget.
Very good. The chair would recognize the gentlelady from California if she'd like to question.
No, Madam Chair, I understand that the majority and minority are working closely together to deal with this as best we can. And I certainly will do my part, not only as a member of this committee, but as a member of the Science Committee. And I want to praise both the chair and ranking member for their leadership.
Thank you both for coming. Is there anything else you want to tell the committee before you, if anything at all? Otherwise, we certainly appreciate your attendance this morning. We certainly will take into consideration and look at the graphs that you've given us and recognize what has happened to the committee in the last several years and what you're looking at going forward. We appreciate you both coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The committee is going to recess until 10:30. We'll now reconvene the Committee on House Admin to continue the hearing on committee funding for the 113th. Quorum is present, so we may proceed. The committee now welcomes Chairman Goodlatte and Ranking Member Conyers of the great state of Michigan. For the Committee on the Judiciary, and the official reporter will enter a page break. They have a new section. The House Judiciary Committee has jurisdiction over protecting our constitutional freedoms and civil liberties, oversight of the United States Departments of Justice and Homeland Security, legal, regulatory, innovation, competition, and antitrust laws, terrorism and crime, and immigration reform. The committee also has jurisdiction over all proposed amendments to the Constitution. Its priorities during the 113th include small business regulatory relief, immigration reform, enhancing efficiencies within our legal system, discouraging frivolous lawsuits, modernizing our patent and copyright laws, and ensuring our cybersecurity efforts match our national security needs. We appreciate both the chairman and the ranking member, their attendance here today before our committee. The committee has had an opportunity to evaluate all of your submitted requests, and we're looking at all of that and going to give it every serious consideration, certainly. And we, again, appreciate your attendance. And the chair now recognizes Chairman Goodlatte for his remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Ranking Member Brady as well, and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on the Judiciary Committee's budget for fiscal session, the first session of the 113th Congress. In this economy, all Americans are forced to tighten their belts and do more with less. I recognize that, and the Judiciary Committee is prepared to do the same. However, Ranking Member Conyers and I would like to make the case before you today that the Judiciary Committee is deserving of the maximum amount of funds that you can dedicate to it. Historically, the Judiciary Committee is one of the most active committees in the Congress. In the 112th Congress, for example, nearly 15% of the total legislative measures introduced were referred to the committee. The Judiciary Committee reported 77 bills and resolutions to the House, with accompanying legislative reports on all but a few. In addition, a total of 42 bills in which the Judiciary Committee had a jurisdictional interest were signed into law by the President. Excluding postal designations and coin naming bills, the Judiciary Committee had more legislation under its primary jurisdiction enacted into law than any other House committee. Already in the 113th Congress, the Judiciary Committee has been hard at work to meet the demands of the heavy workload of the committee, including work on issues of great importance to the entire Congress. One only needs to pick up a newspaper and read the headlines to appreciate how busy the Judiciary Committee has been and will continue to be this year as we consider such issues as immigration reform and firearms, in addition to our normal heavy workload. We also expect to increase the committee's efforts to engage in aggressive oversight this Congress. Among the important issues the committee continues to consider are ensuring that federal law enforcement agencies have the necessary tools to prevent terrorist attacks, that the constitutional rights and civil liberties of Americans are protected, that America's borders are secure, and that the administration of justice is fair and efficient within both the Justice Department and federal law enforcement agencies and within our federal judiciary. In addition, the committee plays an important role in strengthening our economy and putting Americans back to work. We ensure robust and fair competition under the antitrust laws, encourage innovation and promote America's global competitiveness through our intellectual property laws, improve our immigration laws to attract the best and brightest from around the world, and bolster the business climate by providing relief from burdensome and excessive regulations. These issues are critical to the safety and economic well-being of millions of Americans. Because of this, it is vital that we retain a highly qualified staff as the cornerstone of the committee's capacity to consider complicated and often controversial legislation and policy issues that fall within its jurisdiction. To attract and retain quality staff, the committee must be able to offer compensation that is at least somewhat competitive with the private sector. This is particularly challenging when a disproportionate number of committee staff are attorneys with substantial experience and public policy expertise who could command higher salaries from the private sector. In addition to the personnel that are necessary to manage the demanding workload of the Judiciary Committee, there are operating funds that will be critical in enabling the committee to properly investigate certain policy issues under its jurisdiction. For example, I believe that it is an important function of the committee to conduct field hearings on certain complex issues, such as immigration reform, where a full evaluation of the issue is not possible without seeing firsthand how the current programs operate and to better understand the successes and deficiencies of the current law. Furthermore, one of the commitments that I made when I became chairman of the Judiciary Committee is that the committee would build a new cutting-edge website to replace the outdated website that currently exists. It is a disservice to the members of the House and the public to not provide user-friendly, current, transparent information about the important issues being considered by the Judiciary Committee, and therefore rebuilding the committee's website is a top priority. While I will do what is necessary to ensure that the Judiciary Committee is even more productive while operating with less, I respectfully request that when allocating funds to committees, you take into account the legislative burden that the committee and whether it will require more resources when compared with other committees. Lastly, I note that our budget submission continues our commitment to give the minority 1/3 of the staff slots and 1/3 of the salaries after subtracting shared administrative expenses and staff. And I thank you for your time and yield back.
Thank the gentleman very much. And at this time, the chair recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Conyers.
Thank you, Chairwoman Candace Miller, and of course the ranking member, Mr. Brady, and Zoe Lofgren, who is a senior member of the Judiciary Committee as well as this responsibility, and Mr. Harper of Mississippi. We're all glad to be here with you. My chairman has done an excellent job of describing our situation, our responsibilities, and what our ask is. I ask unanimous consent to put my statement in the record in its entirety.
Without objection.
Thank you, and I probably won't have to read it all because much of it is repetitive. But the 2013 budget request for the House Judiciary Committee is very important. I'd like to tell you that when I first came to the Congress, John W. McCormick was the Speaker of the House. And I came to him and I asked him before I'd gotten an assignment that I be assigned to the Judiciary Committee. It was the committee handling the civil rights activities, which in the 60s was really going on at a very high pace. And I told him that was a request I'd like to have passed on. At that time, from Arkansas, his name escapes me right now, but he was the chairman of this committee. It was a Democrat, and I went before him, and they acceded to my request, and I was very, very pleased to start my career out on the Judiciary Committee. The chairman at that time was the late Emanuel Seller of New York, who handled most of the civil rights activity during that period. And we had, and during many of those years, there were Republican chairmen of the House Judiciary Committee. And we got along quite well, as we still do today under Bob Goodlette's leadership. And so I joined with the chairman in requesting that we allocate as much as we can, the maximum amount of budget for the committee to reflect some of the critical issues. The chair, Ms. Miller, has already outlined our constitutional responsibilities, and so I'm sure everyone is aware of them. $77 bills in the last Congress. 1 in 8 of the legislative measures introduced to the House are referred to our committee, and 40 bills signed into law. We have more than 150 subcommittee hearings during the last Congress, and 20 full committee hearings and approximately 50 full committee markups. And so our committee plays a major role in dealing with diverse legislative and oversight issues that have national and occasionally a global significance. In any one session of Congress, of course, immigration reform and reduction of gun violence, copyright enforcement, constitutional amendments, voting rights, and criminal law are all part of our day-to-day, everyday responsibilities. In addition, we have oversight of the Department of Justice, which is I think, a significant responsibility. And we have oversight of the federal judicial system itself. One of the things that really make this job a treat is that we're able to be invited over by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to meet with him to discuss our legislative issues and other issues that connect us and the Supreme Court and the rest of the federal judiciary. Chairman Goodlatte explained the other oversight responsibilities, so I won't go into that. There is one thing I'd like to point out, that it could be that our jurisdiction, because of our jurisdiction, the committee workload will increase in this 113th session of Congress. And Chairman Goodlatte has proposed an ambitious hearing and legislative schedule in which we will be dealing with all of these very current and topical issues that fall within our jurisdiction. As your committee considers, Madam Chairman, the budget allocations for this year, I urge you to prioritize the Judiciary Committee's budget request based on our extensive legislative responsibilities. And I must point out that in addition, we received cuts from the 112th Congress that have made us actually have to reduce some staff. And I think that was an 11% cut from the 112th committee considerations. And so given the negative ramifications, and our staff does work long hours and are frequently called upon to work at night and sometimes on weekends. So if there were even fewer staff allocated, I'm hoping that that could be minimized to the greatest extent possible. The chairman and I with him have submitted a budget request before you today that reflects our shared commitment to retaining the most experienced people that we can to support the significant work of the committee. And I am pleased that Chairman Goodlatte is committed to working cooperatively with me in an effort to minimize any impact of funding reductions and on the workload and assignments that are part of our daily work. And so I thank the members of the committee. I appreciate your attention to our request and hope to be able to persuade you to be as efficient but as generous as possible. I thank the members of the committee.
Thank you very much. We appreciate both the chairman and the ranking member and your comments. We appreciate your attendance here. Just a couple of comments, I would say. As I say, we've received all your budget documentation, started taking a look at it, and I think it is important that you've detailed out here a possibility of some field hearings, in particular about immigration reform. When you think about comprehensive immigration reform being one of the priorities, I think, for the Congress at this time. So we're certainly cognizant of the fact that the committee does have some rather unique challenges going forward. In the 113th, we're looking at some of those kinds of things. One thing I would say, whether this is a question or observation or just sort of throwing something out there for you as an offer, this committee has really tried to do some enterprise types of projects that could resource the respective committees in particular ways. And I'm talking about IT, like the House Cloud. I'm not sure exactly if the committee's had an opportunity to be utilizing some of the various enterprise platforms that this committee has made available. We're going to try to do a better job with Wi-Fi service on the Hill. You perhaps go to paperless kinds of committee hearings so that everybody would have good reception for their iPads, et cetera. I was sort of looking through some of the detail you provided about your website, for instance, rebuilding your website, et cetera. This is an area I think our committee could probably, hopefully, if you think it's appropriate, make some resourcing available to you. These are not huge ticket items, but they could add up a bit and help you with your staffing, et cetera, or be able to, I mean, all money is fungible. Use it in other ways as you see most appropriate. So I offer that to you, and if there's any comments or questions you have in regards to that.
Well, I thank you for your recommendations, Chairman. You're quite right that this new technology offers us an easier and more efficient way to communicate and keep everyone in the country involved and up to date on our developments, and we'll continue to look at that quite closely.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. We will definitely take you up on that offer, and we have hired a new IT person to head our efforts there. We think the committee's work in that area needs to be improved, particularly with regard to the website, and we'll be looking for help and resources wherever we can find them to accomplish that. And we have also utilized some of the services like and are looking at using the Library of Congress upstream as a way to modernize our website and to increase the transparency of the committee, which we think is also important for us to do. So I definitely welcome any way that you can help us. As you've noted, we do have a heavy burden, heavy workload anyway, and anticipating that sequestration would cause us to incur some reductions coming in as a new chairman. We made some very tough personnel decisions, but at the end of that, we have some very particular needs, and we also have some additional work that was perhaps not anticipated just a few months ago related to both Second Amendment issues and immigration issues. So anything you can do to help us level the resources available to committees based upon the amount of work that needs to be produced by those committees would be helpful to the Judiciary Committee, because I think we do as much as any committee in the Congress.
Very well. At this time, I recognize the ranking member, Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only comment and issue, as I have with all the other committees, and especially your committee, because you have a certain quality and expertise of people that, attorneys that you need to hire, is your ability to hire people at the salary that is 3 or 4 times less they can make on the outside, and also the ability to keep the people with the institutional knowledge that you do have working there that came in at a relatively low salary, and then asking them to take another cut. My issue, my concern is whether we get not only your committee but all committees, whether we keep the ability to be able to keep them people and to hire new people. And with that, as the ranking member made note of, you have a senior member of your committee and a valued member of our committee right here who has much more knowledge about your workings than I do, so I'd like to yield my time, remainder of my time, to Ms. Lofgren.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Brady. I actually think that these reductions, given what the committee is facing, are probably unwise, and I would not say that, and I have not said that to other committees, but if we, in fact, are going to move into the very complex area of reform of immigration law, that's a massive effort, and cutting personnel is not going to make us better able to do that. So I think I have a concern about that. I also wanted to ask, it's my understanding on the Democratic side that the staff is each being asked to take a 20% reduction in salary. Is that correct, Mr. Conyers?
I think that it is. I want to be accurate. Oh, that's a worst case scenario. Although just this morning we were going over this, and we had one lawyer, of course unnamed, that we had just been able to raise up after months of working below the rates of compensation for the other attorneys to get back in at a level. So when you take into consideration the sequester effect and the fact that there was a reduction in the 112th Congress, I think the case that we're putting forward is not an over-exaggeration of the need for you to consider all these factors and the quality and the significance of the issues that we're called upon to handle. As you well know, you've been a subcommittee chair as well as a senior member of the Judiciary Committee, so I know that you can verify everything that me and Chairman Goodlatte have remarked about here today.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering if there's ways to economize in other areas, because when I think about, for example, some of the lawyers, and I think that on both sides of the aisle, these are attorneys who took a pay cut to come, in most cases, from the private sector for the chance to work on the public's business. And so they didn't come here to make money, but at some point, if you can't make your car payments, you can't do this. And so I'm just wondering, are there ways to economize to prevent further reductions in salary? Because I think it's going to impinge the capacity of the committee on both sides of the aisle to do the really important work that the Congress has entrusted with us.
Well, Congresswoman Lofgren, as you noted, the committee is, and as you know, we're already hard at work on immigration reform, and we're going to continue that. It's not an easy topic. It's going to take a while to get through that. So virtually all of this year, we're going to be very dedicated to doing that. We have some great attorneys, many with outstanding backgrounds and previous experience and degrees from America's top universities, and they work for the Judiciary Committee because they want to be involved in these public policy issues, but they are paid substantially less than they would earn in the private sector. We had the advantage, if you can call it that, coming in as a new chairman, of going through the entire staff and making tough decisions prior to my taking office as chairman to anticipate the sequestration. And we have reached out to Ranking Member Conyers and his chief of staff to work with them to help find ways so that they don't experience that kind of a pay cut. We do not want to see that happen. But both in terms of our need for additional employees that we did not fill because of the anticipation of the problem, but not anticipating that we'd be spending so much on immigration, and virtually every subcommittee on the committee has a heavy workload, but some heavier than was anticipated, and their need to not cut back on great people that they have on their side. We really could use consideration by your committee that our cut not be comparable to some other committees that, and I don't want to get involved in naming anybody, but that may not have that kind of workload or that kind of need to have as many attorneys as the Judiciary Committee, by the very nature of its work, needs to have.
May I ask, and I don't know if we're in a position to do this, but given the two hot-button issues that are facing the Congress in terms of the Second Amendment and immigration reform, whether you could provide a modest sum that might allow the committee to better meet those challenges if we were to take a look at that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether the committee is even willing to do that, but if we cannot actually step forward and discharge our obligations, the whole Congress is going to suffer in that regard. Do you have what the amount would be if we were to do a minor adjustment to deal with those two issues?
Not on me at the moment, but I could certainly submit it for the record, and I would be pleased to do that.
We would be happy to. We've given our overall budget recommendations, and we would ask that consideration be given to that, but we'd be happy to provide any supplemental information that
I would just note, just by way of precedent, a couple of years ago, the committee did give an augmentation to the Ethics Committee because of the workload that they had. And, you know, we can't, every committee is going to come in and say our workload is crushing, and that is true. But there sometimes are circumstances where there's anomalies that we have to cope with, and this may be one of those cases. Could I ask just one more question, and then I won't take my time. Mr. Goodlatte, I want to make sure that the entire legislative history of the committee is available on our websites. And that used to be the case. I was actually thinking about referring somebody to some testimony that was received when I chaired the subcommittee, and I found, much to my dismay, that all of it was gone. Storage is cheap. I think it's now been restored. But I think that the obligation, no matter which party has the majority and who is chair, that's the history of the committee. All of the testimony ought to be available on the website for all of the subcommittees.
Well, I agree, both from the standpoint of doing proper research, also from the standpoint of transparency. I think the chairwoman's offer with regard to help from this committee, and again, our new technology folks will definitely work with the House Administration Committee on use of cloud technology, for example, so that there should be no problems with storage of information, and access and good search capabilities as well. Our website is woefully in need of improvement, and we're dedicated to doing that.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to working with you on that, and I thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank the gentlelady for her comments, and at this time the chair recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Harper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to both of you, and thanks for the great job that you're doing. And I had the privilege in the 111th Congress of serving on Judiciary, and Mr. Conyers, you as chairman, and I've noticed that the committee's always had a great working relationship across the aisle, and I know that you're continuing that tradition, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that that hard work and difficult times, particularly on the budget side of things, and trying to do this. But you know, in 2011 there was a 5% cut and 6.4% in 2012. While nobody likes to see that, it appeared to me that you did an incredible job on those restrictions and less funds that you had available. Am I correct in that, in the 112th, that you met your obligations during that time?
Yes, I was not chairman then, but certainly we met the targets that we were responsible for, and we also anticipated that there might be further by not filling all positions. And not all positions need to be filled, but I would also argue to the committee that because of the work that we're now undertaking, some of which came about without anticipation, not that we wouldn't be working on immigration law, but the nationwide push and the nationwide interest in doing comprehensive immigration reform is a good development, and we want to take full advantage of it. We need to have the right people to do it, and we have other similar burdens, and we have changed other subcommittees in order to be able to do that. So our request to have some help with some personnel would be very important to us and very welcome if you can favorably respond.
And I know we've mentioned a number of areas that are going to be very important in this Congress. Are there any other special circumstances that you think the committee should be aware of as we try to set these figures?
Well, other than to say that there are positions that the committee needs to have related to specific areas of the law, antitrust law, for example, where we need to have the resources so that as we do the extra work that's needed in immigration, for example, we're not shortchanging a huge area of jurisdiction and importance to the committee, and that is oversight. I mean, virtually every other week we have a major antitrust issue that the committee needs to be looking at. Last week it was the merger of American Airlines and U.S. Air. That's a very important thing that our antitrust laws play very heavily into, and we need to have the expertise in that area available to the members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Could I just add on just briefly? Antitrust is a huge area. But the other area, Mr. Harper, that is, I don't know if it's going to become a growing concern yet because we haven't had a chance to look at it carefully, but in the voting of last year in November, there were many reports that there were long lines and a lot of waiting. I think some people, I hate to say this, even in Michigan, there were 1 and 2 hour waits in some places, and in some states there were even more than that, which we wanted to look at. I don't know if it's going to be big enough or consume any more of our staff than we can afford, but it's something that I wanted to mention here at this committee hearing. Thank you, sir.
And I appreciate both of the comments. I will just say, as a former Secretary of State of Michigan, Chief Elections Officer, I'm not aware of anybody waiting that long of time, but I'm appreciative of those comments. We'll certainly look at that. I appreciate both of you coming, the chairman and the ranking member. Again, we've had a good discussion, and the committee will take every due consideration of the very good documentation you've put forward and your request for your budget. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
The committee now welcomes Chairman Lucas and Ranking Member Peterson of the Committee on Agriculture. The official reporter will enter a page break as we record a new section. The Committee on Ag has jurisdiction over our agricultural policies generally, agricultural production and marketing, stabilization of prices of agricultural products and commodities, commodity exchanges, crop insurance and soil conservation, and the extension of farm credit and farm security. During the 113th, the committee's priorities include working on a farm bill, guarding against and stopping unnecessary regulations, and ensuring our WTO and trading partners allow fair access for American products and commodities. So we appreciate both the chairman and the ranking member being here. The committee has had an opportunity to look at all of the budget documentation that you've submitted, and we appreciate your attention to all of that detail. And at this time, the chair would recognize the chairman, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and members of the committee for this opportunity to speak with you today. I appreciate Ranking Member Colin Peterson joining me to outline our committee's proposed budget for the next year. As all you know, we've had a very long and proud history of bipartisan cooperation, and I plan to continue that spirit of cooperation as we proceed with the work of the committee in the 113th Congress. In addition to bipartisanship, the committee has a long history of fiscal responsibility. The modest spending and cooperative nature of our committee spans back more than 2 decades under the control of both parties. With the impending expiration authorizations of both the 2008 Farm Bill and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, we have a significant workload ahead of us in this Congress. Therefore, we're proposing level funding for the committee for the 113th Congress. The resources provided us will allow us to write both of these comprehensive pieces of legislation, as well as proceed with a robust oversight agenda, as outlined in our oversight plan submitted to you earlier this year. With significant cuts in the 112th Congress and the budget uncertainty, we were unable to fill 4 of our positions on the committee. In addition to those 4 open slots, we're now down another 5 staff people, a press person, an investigator, and 3 policy advisors. We've not filled those positions because we did not know what the budget cuts to expect for this year and this Congress. This equals a 28% reduction in our staff if we do not fill these open positions. In response to this budget uncertainty, we have consolidated positions, eliminated subcommittee staff directors. Unfortunately, though, this puts our subcommittee chairman at a disadvantage, as this committee has always been able to provide at least 1 staff person to serve each of the subcommittee chairmen. We also reduced the number of subcommittees at the committee from 6 subcommittees to 5 subcommittees. And finally, we've done very little travel and limited our field hearings. We're doing everything possible to work more efficiently and effectively. The committee will continue to support leadership in implementing an additional 11% cut if necessary. However, I'm concerned about the long-term impact on the committee to fulfill its responsibilities, as well as being able to retain qualified, experienced staff. In order to implement this level of cuts, we'll have to continue to make very conservative staffing decisions. This will hinder our ability to have an aggressive oversight hearing agenda, and additionally, we'll have to continue to limit the number of field hearings and site visits that we will be able to do. However, if the committee allocates a 5% increase over our actual spending in 2012, then we should be able to maintain our current staff levels and hire 4 additional staff members. While we would still be shorthanded under this scenario, we certainly can make it work. Madam Chairman, we truly have our work cut out for us in this Congress, but we firmly believe that we can accomplish all of this given our current resources. We greatly appreciate your consideration of our budget request, and please let us know if we can provide any additional information to you or the ranking member or the committee. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank the chairman very much. At this time, we recognize the ranking member, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Ranking Member Brady and members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here today to support the Agricultural Committee's budget request. As Chairman Lucas has said, the Ag Committee has a history of working in a bipartisan fashion, and not always easy, but we work very hard to listen and understand each other. Chairman Lucas has outlined there are many challenges before us, including completion of the 5-year Farm Bill and the CFTC reauthorization. The Farm Bill has proven to be a tough project to finish, as you all are aware. But the committee has worked hard over the past couple of years to use all opportunities to get the bill done. So we're going to continue that effort this year, and I hope and expect that it'll mean a final Farm Bill signed into law this year. Financial reform oversight will continue to be a focus for the committee as we consider CFTC reauthorization, and we need to make sure that we do not repeat some of the mistakes of the past with regard to financial sector regulation. The public record shows that we are a frugal committee. We strive to use our resources and staff as efficiently and effectively as possible. And through our work, Chairman Lucas has been fair to the minority. We have no complaints about the division of resources. The majority has worked to protect the rights of the minority, and we appreciate the Chairman's efforts in that regard. It helps make the rest of our work all the easier when we agree on policy decisions and perhaps more importantly when we disagree on policy. So I thank the committee today for the opportunity to visit with you and your important work on behalf of the House, and appreciate your consideration of the Ag Committee's budget request. Thank you.
I thank you, gentlemen, both very, very much. And you do have some unique challenges, certainly as we go into this Congress with the Farm Bill. Sometimes people say, why is the Farm Bill so important? Well, if you like to eat, maybe it's important. You don't care about eating, maybe you don't care, right? But it is critically important for our country, and we certainly all appreciate the bipartisanship that the committee has always demonstrated, and hope you're going to be very successful with that this year. Just a couple of things. As I say, we've looked at the detail. I'm just looking through all the vacancies that you have in both the majority and the minority on the committee. We're certainly cognizant of that. I know you've detailed out here a bit for field hearings, perhaps, on your Farm Bill as well, which I think is certainly an appropriate thing. Just one thing I would say as a question or a comment or sort of throwing it out there for you. One of the things that this committee has done very well in the past, and really want to ratchet up here a bit, is to help resource the respective committees with perhaps IT kinds of things as you're utilizing some new technologies. We know we need to have a little bit better Wi-Fi service on the Hill as you possibly go to paperless committee hearings, those kinds of things, to make sure your iPads are working properly, et cetera. I was sort of trying to look through some of the detail you gave about various kinds of things that you've done with IT. It looks like you've sort of purchased your own software agreement, et cetera, rather than using the House cloud. And I guess I just offer that up as perhaps whether there are any of the enterprise kinds of foundations projects that this committee is working on that would assist your committee. We certainly want to stand by and do that however we can, whether that's website development, whatever it is. So not really so much in the form of a question, but want to help if we can on things that you think might be appropriate.
Absolutely, Chairman. We've got some very good IT people on the staff and working in whatever way will make the systems more efficient. I know that there have been efforts to try and address the committee providing resources for all committees, the subscription costs and all those sort of things. We're willing to look at those. Colin and I have run this ship in a very frugal fashion, and we're going to continue to do that. So whatever help you can provide, we'll be very pleased with.
Very well. At this time, I recognize my ranking member, Mr. Brady. No questions? At this time, the chair recognizes Mr. Harper.
I just want to thank you for what you're doing, and under somewhat less than perfect circumstances, I think you've done a commendable job on the committee, and we know these are not the best days to set things, but are there any special circumstances, Chairman Lucas, that you think the committee needs to be aware of as we're trying to set the amounts for each committee?
I would just note that as we work through this Farm Bill process, having to reduce the number of staff people who work with the subcommittee chairman means that our additional staff have to work a lot of overtime. And I would say this, the people who work on the Ag Committee, the lawyers and the economists, the policy folks, are very focused on this subject matter and are willing to go to great lengths to get the mission done. When Colin and I and the committee are successful in finishing our Farm Bill work, if we don't return to some sort of normal funding levels in the future, though, I can see once the 5-year Farm Bill is done, a potential for desertion amongst these good overworked folks. And I want to maintain that skill set, that knowledge set for oversight and all the things that come after that. So I just observe that our folks are going to do everything that's necessary to get this Farm Bill done. But after that, I may have a hard time retaining them when the adrenaline of the Farm Bill process is over.
Just so you know, Mr. Chairman, the staff behind you did a good job of holding their applause when you said that. So thank you for your time, and I yield back.
We certainly, again, we appreciate both the chairman and the ranking member being in attendance today. The committee is going to give every serious consideration to your budget requests, which are very well thought out, and certainly we are very cognizant of the challenges that you face with the Farm Bill, et cetera, and all these vacancies and the budget constraints that you've been operating under. We're appreciative of that, and we'll look at it all. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you both coming. Thank you. We are going to try to get the budget on the, yeah, hopefully if they're here. As soon as they're ready, we'll get to them, and if we can get them all on the record, and then we can break for the votes. All right, in the interest of time, we will take the written testimony from Chairman Ryan, and we would ask the ranking member if he has any comment in regards to the budget. I will tell you, sir, that the committee has received all the documentation that you've submitted. We've looked at it. We appreciate it. We are especially appreciative of how fiscally conservative the Budget Committee has been in regards to, you really have been walking the walk there, and the committee's well aware of that. And if you have any comments.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Ranking Member Brady, committee members. I appreciate those comments. I do have a written statement to submit for the record, and I know Mr. Ryan would join me in saying that we have had a bipartisan relationship when it comes to dealing with our committee budget issues as they affect the committee, and we have been trying to do a lot more with a lot less. So I thank the members of the committee, and hope everyone can get home before the airports close.
Very good. Thank you so much. We appreciate your attendance. Any comment from a ranking member? Mr. Harper, any comment? All right. Very well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Committee will be in recess.
We will now reconvene the Committee on House Administration to continue the hearing on committee funding for the 113th Congress. A quorum is present, so we may proceed. The committee now welcomes Chairman Hastings and Ranking Member Markey of the Committee on Natural Resources. Would the official reporter please enter a page break into the hearing record to begin a new section? With the history dating back to the Louisiana Purchase, the Committee on Natural Resources has a proud history and jurisdiction over our nation's energy and mineral resources, fisheries and wildlife, affairs related to our Native American communities, our water and power resources, and our public lands and environmental regulations. Its priorities in the 113th Congress will be to continue to maximize our nation's great natural assets and lower energy costs for millions of Americans while stifling job-killing and industry-harming regulations. Chairman Hastings and Ranking Member Markey, welcome. You will each have 5 minutes to testify before the committee. I'll now recognize the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, for the opportunity to discuss the work of the Committee on Natural Resources and to present our 2013 budget requests. The Natural Resources Committee is a real workhorse in the House to a degree that I do not believe is widely obvious to all. A quick look at the statistics of the legislative activity of the committee in the 112th Congress best demonstrates just how heavy a workload the Natural Resources Committee and its staff perform for the House. Last Congress, the committee ranked fourth in total bills referred to it, nearly 700, first in a number of bills reported out of committee, first in bill reports filed, first in number of bills passed by the House, over 100, fourth in bills considered under a rule, third in public laws enacted, and fifth in total hearings among the authorizing committee, over 200. The committee's jurisdiction under House Rule 10 is deep and broad. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we must maintain a diverse staff with specialized expertise on diverse matters ranging from offshore energy production to 398 national park units to national forests and the ensuing wildfires on those forests, to over 560 wildlife refuges, to commercial and recreational fisheries, to 566 recognized Indian tribes, to all mining and minerals and coal production, to federal hydropower and western irrigation projects, to our overseas territory, and to ocean and wildlife generally, including the endangered species. These activities all have tremendous impact on our nation's economy and the federal budget. There are areas in our nation suffering severe economic hardship and double-digit employment. Many of these areas have a direct connection to our federal lands, federal policies, and federal laws. And many of these areas are subject to laws subject to reauthorization under our committee's jurisdiction. Many do not realize the committee is responsible for one of the largest source of non-tax revenue in the federal government in the form of oil and natural gas leasing and production. Between 2008 and 2012, approximately $1 to $2 billion every month was collected by the Interior Department from this development. The committee's ability to uphold this workload and fulfill our duties to the House is directly reliant on the committee staff. It is for these reasons we've acted aggressively over the past 2 years to reduce our non-staff salary budget. In total, the committee has reduced its non-staff salary budget by over 50% from the amount spent in 2010 to the amount proposed in 2013. These costs now represent just 6% of our total budget, and our staff salary represents 94% of the budget. Even with making these deep cuts to form a lean, efficient operating budget, the reductions to the personal budget have already affected the ability of both the majority and the minority to hire and retain staff. Further reductions would directly impact our existing staff. And it's for these reasons that I'm requesting a budget for 2013 that reflects the freeze from what we had in 2012. However, should this sequester be maintained government-wide for all of the fiscal year 2013, I want to assure you that the committee will certainly fulfill its duty to execute the choices that we would have to be required to do. But to be clear, a full-year requester equaling 11% reduction would require impactful adjustments to the existing staff of the committee. It would reduce the committee's budget by over $800,000. For the majority, positions identified as core capabilities just last year would now go unfilled, and positions occupied at the beginning of the year would need to be vacant by the end of the year. The majority already has 3 staff spots permanently unfilled under the sequester and would grow to at least 6, meaning that 1 in 70 majority staff positions would be unfilled. The House as an institution asks and receives a great deal from our committee. We very capably perform both legislatively and reducing our budget to a core operating level. So we ask you for your consideration for all of this hard work as you review and determine our budget for 2013. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to any questions that you may have.
Now the chair recognizes Ranking Member Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Brady, thank you for having us here. I'm here to ask for support for the Natural Resources Committee's budget request for the 113th Congress. Doc Hastings and I, we have vigorous disagreements and debates in the Natural Resources Committee, but I wholeheartedly support his presentation of the budget facts as they relate to the impact of the cuts that our committee has experienced over the last 2 years on our ability to carry out the work entrusted to us excuse me, by the House of Representatives. In order to be able to carry out the duties entrusted to it by the House over all of these diverse and complex matters, the committee needs a budget that will enable us to do our job. As Chairman Hastings has noted, our committee was already forced to absorb a 6.8% cut in funding in 2011 and faced a further reduction of 6.4% last year. These reductions mean that the committee is now operating with a budget that is 12.7% less than what it received in 2010, a reduction of more than $1 million in funding. The committee and its staff have worked long and hard to prevent these prior cuts from harming our productivity. Our committee has been one of the most active in the House in terms of bills referred to us, hearings we have held, actions we have taken on these bills. Sustaining this level of effort requires a dedicated professional staff. As Chairman Hastings has noted, under the request he is submitting for 2013, personnel and salary costs will comprise 94.3% of the committee's budget. The budget that Chairman Hastings has submitted provides for a freeze at 2013 allocation. In my view, even this request is barely sufficient to enable the committee to do its work. I would therefore strongly urge that the committee approve a budget that would allow for a 5% increase in funding. This would help bring the committee's funding level back to a more sustainable level. What the committee should not do, in my view, is to allow sequestration to further slash the committee's funding. I voted against the sequestration when it came up before the House because I oppose that type of across-the-board cuts that it would require. I understand that the committee is in a difficult position now that no action has been taken by the Congress to eliminate sequestration and replace it with a balanced package of spending reductions and tax reforms. If the committee approves a committee funding resolution with an 11% sequestration reduction, it will adversely affect the ability of both the majority and minority to retain and recruit talented and experienced professional staff. The committee would not be able to maintain the pace of legislative activity to which the chairman and I are committed and which the demands from our colleagues require. I would note that the chairman has, consistent with the proper practices of our committee, allocated 1/3 of the personnel and salary budget to the minority. We have also agreed to continue the practice of the committee to employ the nonpartisan shared staff responsible for certain shared financial management, administrative, and support functions out of the 2/3 share of the majority. We think this arrangement has been fair to both the majority and the minority. With respect to staffing, the majority has also agreed to a 2/3, 1/3 split for the committee staff, which results in a proper allocation for the minority. So I would conclude by reiterating my strong preference that the committee's budget be increased by 5%. If that is not possible, I would argue that, at a minimum, the budget should be maintained at the current level in light of the substantial challenges before our committee this Congress. What we cannot and should not do is to allow sequestration to harm the ability of Congress to do the oversight and to pass the legislation that the American people expect us to be working on. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you, Mr. Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Markey, and thank each of you for being here. And now I'll ask a few questions and tell you, first of all, how much I appreciate the work that you do on the committee. You do have a great staff on both sides, And we certainly want to enable you to continue doing the great job that took place in the 112th. Are there any special circumstances, Mr. Chairman, or you, Mr. Markey, any special circumstances that we need to be aware of when we're establishing these figures?
Well, I would just respond by saying, and I pointed that out in my remarks, 94% of our budget is salary. That's pretty hard for any outside group to affect. But there are some issues, supplies that necessarily go with all committees for that matter. I think that's something that your committee really ought to look at to see if there can be perhaps some consolidation, whether you're talking about subscriptions, whether you're talking about phones or anything like that. And we found, for example, going through our budget, which this is a good exercise, that maybe the cost of phones is extraordinarily high because of where they're placed equipment. Now, that needs to be looked at. We're certainly going to look at that. But with 94% of our budget being salary, it's pretty hard to look at other areas. You get it on the margin at that point.
And so you're continuing to look anywhere you can to affect that savings.
Yeah, just to give you an example, I mentioned 94% of salary right now. Just 2 Congresses ago, the ratio was 90-10. In other words, 10% for travel and everything else. Right. And one of the areas that is affect, we have jurisdiction over all public federal lands. Mm-hmm. A lot of that is not in the East Coast. There is some on the East Coast and the West Coast. And we think it's important to have hearings when we can, but we've obviously had to cut our travel budget because that's part of the non-salary part. But those are decisions that need to be made. But I think it's advantageous for the American people if we could have hearings in other areas.
Mr. Markey, anything you'd care to add to comments of the chairman?
Okay. Doc spoke for me.
Thank you, Mr. Markey. Mr. Chairman, and now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Brady, for any questions he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just thank you for testifying in front of us. And it's, as I said to every committee here, it is my main concern that it's hard to find qualified people to come into work for us here at the salary that we pay them when they can make 2 and 3 times in the private sector. And then we do find them at a lower salary, we wind up cutting them. And I know they have dedication and all, but I think that sometimes school bills and rent and mortgage, little stuff like that matters a little bit. So have you had problems with people that attract better people and the people that you have to be able to keep them?
I think, thank you for the question. I think one of the challenges we face, and Mr. Harper mentioned this when he was introducing the committee, the diversity we have as far as our jurisdiction, and I talked about that also. It's sometimes very hard to find a staff that, say, is expert in, has a lot of knowledge in ocean policy to try to figure out what's going on in national park policy or Western irrigation or Western power. So sometimes it's difficult to find people that overlap, and you have to find people that have expertise in those areas. But we do it the best. But because our portfolio is so difficult, I'm not sure we have any more problem than other committees, but we do have a wide portfolio, as I mentioned, and that is difficulty in itself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions.
We thank each of you for being here. Thank you. The committee now welcomes Chairman Graves and Ranking Member Velazquez of the Committee on Small Business. Would the official reporter please enter a page break into the hearing record to begin a new section? Established to protect and assist small businesses, the committee has jurisdiction over matters related to small business financial aid, regulatory flexibility, and paperwork reduction. It also has legislative and oversight responsibilities related to the Small Business Administration and its programs. During the 113th Congress, its priorities are to continue to strive to alleviate the crushing burdens on our nation's small businesses from excessive healthcare-related regulations and mandates, and to ensure that the Small Business Administration is operating efficiently and effectively in prudently expanding capital and opportunities to our job-creating small businesses. Chairman Graves and Ranking Member Velasquez are welcome to each of you, and we will recognize each of you now for 5 minutes of testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Brady for the opportunity to discuss the 2013 budget on the request of the Small Business Committee. I'm proud of the Small Business Committee's accomplishments in the last Congress. The committee held 80 hearings, 9 field hearings. We engaged in aggressive oversight of the administration's 20 agencies, enacted federal contracting reforms. We reauthorized important research grant programs, passed regulatory reform legislation, and developed some unique communication tools to reach out to small businesses all over America. We've also been very pleased to serve as a resource to all members of the House who call on us for assistance with their small business constituents' needs, and we look forward to building on that success. The committee has done all of this work on a very tight budget, and we should. We understand that federal spending has to be curtailed, and we have been willing to prioritize and save. In fact, last year the committee was one of only 3 committees that were asked for an additional 1% above the across-the-board cuts for all the other committees. The committee provides 1/3 of its resources to the minority, over which they have full control, and I appreciate the sacrifices and the very tough decisions that the ranking member has made to ensure that the committee lives within its means while meeting its responsibilities. But today we're talking about the additional cuts in 2013 and how various budget scenarios might affect the committee's operations. And like most committees, the vast majority of our funding is devoted to personnel. Currently, we have 28 staff doing the work to keep the committee running and meeting our oversight and legislative responsibilities. And frankly, we could use more staff. But knowing that more budget cuts are likely, the majority made decisions not to hire and to combine some staff duties so that our payroll would be sustainable in 2013. And we hope that will be the case, but honestly, an 11% cut would require us to make some very difficult personnel decisions. The committee does not have a significant amount of non-salary spending to look to for savings. And these expenditures give us the tools to do our work like communications, reference materials, supplies, equipment. And there really is not a whole lot of fat to cut if we want to do effective oversight and run an efficient organization. If the committee's budget level is funded or set at 105% of what was actually spent in 2012, the outlook improves. And we still may be able to hire the additional staff that we need, but we would only be able to maintain the status quo. The budgets that the committee has submitted under these scenarios reflect this reality, and our budget submissions show relatively flat or slightly reduced spending in non-personnel budget categories. And the personnel budget is adjusted for whichever scenario is going to occur. And I appreciate that the House Administration Committee has a tough job to do in administrating yet another round of budget cuts to the committees, and we'll do our best to work with whatever resources are provided. And we hope that the members will consider that our committee is already doing more with less and has an important role to fulfill as it advocates for the nation's best job creators. Thank you for the committee's time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now recognize Ranking Member Velasquez.
Thank you, Chairman Harper, Ranking Member Brady. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the budget submission for the Small Business Committee in the 113th Congress. I think it goes without saying the key role small businesses play in our economy. During tough times, small firms are often looked upon to help lift us back towards prosperity. Our job on the committee is not solely to investigate and examine any matter affecting small businesses, but also serve as the voice of small firms and entrepreneurs in Congress. The Committee on Small Business covers a number of issues: healthcare, taxes, energy, capital access, contracting, technology, agriculture, trade, not to mention jurisdiction over the Small Business Administration. Such an extensive portfolio requires staff with expertise in the various issues area. As many committees have indicated, it is difficult to retain highly skilled staff with a budget that continues to dwindle. We have made adjustments along the way, but deeper and deeper cuts will undoubtedly take a toll. While the funds are reduced, the workload only continues to increase. The reality is that the minority was able to manage with last year's budget strictly due to the fact that we were understaffed. Although our operational expenses are kept to a strict minimum, our funding does not allow us to fill all vacant slots. For example, we are in need of a regulations counsel as well as an economist, but have not yet filled those positions. Now, with sequestration in effect, any and all future planning as far as staffing are concerned have been put on hold until we know what the outcome will be. Chairman Graves and I, along with all our committee members, continue to work in a bipartisan manner to fulfill our jurisdictional responsibilities. We understand these spending cuts are inevitable, but we ask that you are gentle when reviewing our numbers. The better staffed and equipped our committee is, the better we're prepared to fulfill our jurisdictional responsibility. Thank you, and I appreciate your time, and will be happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you very much. And we know this is a difficult time. We've already been through a round of reductions in the 112th. And so I would ask each of you, do you have any unique challenges to your workload that you will have in this Congress versus 112th?
Well, the biggest thing is obviously going to be, trying to continue those resources, provide those resources to committee members that obviously they need when they're doing, serving their constituencies, whether it's, through doing a small business symposium or a contracting event where, they're trying to show small businesses the opportunities within the federal government on contracting. That gets tougher when the budget's cut, and then also just trying to do more with less. And again, that's where we are. I think we're authorized up to 47 employees, but we have 28. So.
Well, I want to say thanks for the effort you're making. And this is obviously difficult for everyone to try to do, but I'm going to now recognize Ranking Member Brady to see if he has any questions.
Again, my comment is whether or not you can attract the quality people to do your job and whether you can keep them. Once you have with the institutional knowledge made them want to stay, they're getting paid less probably than the private sector, and now you're asking them to take another cut, and I'm wondering how that may affect the ability for you to perform in your committee.
It's very difficult to be able to hire experts, qualified, talented, committed staff. And not only that, but just for these staff to feel that they will be remunerated and that they will stay on board. It's very easy to train staff that will be willing to leave and go into the private sector. And please don't forget, this is the smallest budget of any committee. And given the state of the economy and how fragile the economy still is, we get so many calls from members, individual members, not only that serve in the committee, but across the board, asking us to help them navigate some of the obstacles that small businesses are facing when they try to access capital through traditional lenders, or to help put together workshops in their districts.
Thank you, and thank you for appearing in front of us, and that's all questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come see us. Thank you.
Thank you.
The committee now welcomes Chairman Conaway and Ranking Member Sanchez of the Committee on Ethics. Would the official reporter please enter a page break into the hearing record to begin a new section? We welcome both of you here. In the interest of time, I had some information here to read about what your committee does and the importance of it, but I have firsthand knowledge of how important the committee is. And we welcome both of you here today, and we have are going to attempt to get through before they call for votes here. And we appreciate very much you being here, Chairman Conaway, Ranking Member Sanchez, and you each have 5 minutes to testify for the committee, and I'll now recognize Chairman Conaway.
Well, thank you, Mr. Harper. Let the record reflect that your exposure to the Ethics Committee is as a member of the Ethics Committee.
Yeah, let's clear that up, please.
In the interest of time, I'm going to dispense with reading my testimony to you, if I could get unanimous consent to enter it in the record. When I started as chair this time, the team mission is to get our work done as quickly and expeditiously as possible. That requires some resources to make that happen. One of the complaints the House Ethics Committee has about the House Ethics Committee is that our investigations and our processes take too long and drag out. And some of that's built into the system, but the idea is to move things along quickly. Members are far better off with an answer than with the unknown. And so both on the customer service side of our shop, advising consent, education side, getting those answers out quickly as well. But on the adjudicatory phases, making that happen quickly is high on our list as well. We are currently at 24 employees. We're rated up to 29. We don't have the resources to go to 29 at this point. We are in an unusual circumstance, as you're well aware, coming off of a particular case the last 2 years that provided additional resources to the committee. And we would argue to keep some of those, given the increase in workload that the Stock Act is in the process of having, as well as continuing to do the job in as expeditious a manner as we can because of the impact that our work has on members' reputations as well as their ability to do their job as well. So with those brief statements, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield to the ranking member and be ready for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ranking Member Sanchez, you're now recognized.
Thank you so much. And in the interest of time, I would also ask unanimous consent to just have my formal statement included in the record.
Without objection.
Great. In the interest of time, I just want to touch on 3 very important things that impact the work of the Ethics Committee. We are a unique committee in that we have a nonpartisan professional staff, and they have a tremendous workload to do the work that we require of them, and that gives confidence to the public in the work that we do up here on the Hill. In 2007, private travel was mandated to be reviewed by the Ethics Committee, and that has increased the workload of the committee tremendously. We are coming up almost on the 10,000th request for private travel, and that's an involved process of getting information from the trip sponsors. It requires a lot of time, and that has increased the staff hours required in order to review each of those requests for private travel. In 2008, the Office of Congressional Ethics, the OCE, was created. They are able to refer matters to the Ethics Committee, and that has also increased the workload of the staff themselves. While the majority of work that the committee staff does is still self-initiated by the committee, those OCE referrals do add to their casework. And staffing authority was increased in accordance with the creation of the OCE, but we've never been fully staffed up since then. Although we operate with a highly trained staff, we are not at our maximum capacity in terms of the staff that we could hire. The one thing that is keeping us from doing that, of course, is the budget. And then lastly, with the passage of the Stock Act, we now are requiring periodic transaction reports of transactions of stock or assets, and that occurs several times throughout the year. Each one of those transactions has to be reviewed and certified by committee staff, so that will also significantly increase the caseload. So we are basically here, and I'm in agreement with everything the chairman said, we are basically here to say that given the challenges that face the Ethics Committee, further reductions in our budget would mean longer wait times for members and others to get the answers that they need and deserve. So I will leave that to your consideration. I know you have a tough job to do, but we also are seeking to do the work that the Ethics Committee needs to do under very challenging circumstances. And with that, I will I will yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you so much, and we do appreciate what the Ethics Committee does. And while we may not be fully staffed, have an excellent staff that's very dedicated and hardworking and much appreciated for a lot of the work that the average member may never pay any attention to or look at what has to be done in such great detail, and to make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed, and sometimes in triplicate, to make sure that that gets done. So we are in a difficult budget era, and we understand that, but I would ask each of you, do you have any unique challenges, and I know you're not at liberty to discuss details, but do you have any unique challenges that you see facing you in the 113th Congress that did not exist in the 112th Congress that we need to be aware of, just in generalities?
Yeah, as the ranking member mentioned, we've got these periodic transaction reports. Those are coming in they're required within 30 days of a transaction or within 45 days of notice. We will have those throughout the year. Then the annual financial statements themselves will have to file very similar information with respect that there will be numerous inquiries, I suspect, from the press and others as to why there may be differences, clerical and others. So we anticipate that that will only grow. We're also challenged with working with some members as to how they actually deal with these with the Stock Act, and that's requiring additional resources. I want to echo your comments earlier about our team. We have a terrific staff, and one of the reasons why we've been able to do the work that has been done so far, and I think quite frankly improve over what previous years have done, is because of the hard work and dedication of the team that's in place. They are terrific, but the Stock Act will have additional ramifications that we really can't tell. Electronic filing of that, implementation of that, the education piece of that'll have to go with the electronic filing piece. For these PTRs, as well as for financial disclosures, will increase our workload as well. And because it's a complaint-driven system, you never know when a spat of complaints will come in. And we don't anticipate those right now, but we're subject to members running afoul of the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think the chairman summed it up quite adequately. The Stock Act will create a deluge of additional work, and that is something that we will try to keep pace with as best we can. But it will be very challenging if we don't have additional staff to help with that.
I'll now recognize Ranking Member Brady for any questions he may have.
Thank you for your testimony and appearing today. I would not dare ask any Ethics Committee any questions, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Let me make one off. In our written report to you, we talked about areas of potential savings. We use Westlaw and LexisNexis on our committee. There may be other committees who have subscriptions to that one as well. And an institutional-wide subscription might be cheaper than each individual committee doing it in a way. That way, we keep the resources that we need to have it, but the House would spend less money doing it.
Certainly, Judiciary comes to mind, and other committees.
Judiciary, I suspect that many of the lawyers on all the committees somehow have access to it, and if there's a way we can squeeze a little out of those guys being Nexus and Westlaw, then it might help the overall efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for being here. The committee now welcomes Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith of the Committee on Armed Services. Would the official reporter please enter a page break into the hearing record to begin a new section? In the interest of time and knowing that votes could be coming shortly, rather than read the entire script that I have here, I wanted to say we commend you on the great work that the committee does. We have some difficult time that we have upon us because of budget restraints. But at this time, I will now recognize Chairman McKeon for 5 minutes for any remarks he would care to make.
there was a thing here that told me what to do, and I covered it up. I'm grateful to be joined here today by my partner, Ranking Member Adam Smith. Adam's presence here today is more than symbolic. I'm proud to say that the Armed Services Committee is truly a bipartisan committee. For more than a half century, our committee has fulfilled the House's constitutional responsibility to provide for the common defense. We do that each year by pulling our parties together to craft an annual defense authorization bill. Each year, Adam and I have worked to stop politics at the water's edge and build a sound military and national security policy based on bipartisan consensus, sending a message to every man and woman in uniform that their country is behind them. This week, we started the first series of hearings in preparation for the 52nd annual NDAA. We will do it in the toughest partisan environment either of us has ever known. Every year, the naysayers ask if this is the cycle when we won't get a bill done, and every year we beat the odds. Last year, we passed our bill with only hours to spare. The partisan environment does not give me pause. The enhanced oversight burden that we face does not deter me. If there's one thing that I worry will stop us from getting our work done or cause us to produce a substandard product, it's a resource deficit that we face in our committee. The Armed Services Committee is the largest committee in the House, overseeing the largest federal department. Yet we're also a no-frills, bang-for-your-buck organization. The committee ranks 10th on overall committee funding. We have the lowest staff-to-member ratio of any committee at 1 to 1.15. Traditionally, we return less than 1% of our allocated funds, which I will elaborate on later on in my testimony. I appreciate that last year the HASC resources were not cut as deeply as they might have been. However, that cut did have an impact. Though we're authorized 71 staff slots, we could only sustain 67 personnel on staff in the 112th Congress. In order to sustain this reduced staff, we were forced to cancel important resources like subscriptions. By the way, that sounds kind of, a subscription, but we have to be able to respond immediately when they testify on the Senate side, come over to our side. This gives us the ability to get these things online and have our questions ready the next day. Deferred maintenance, replacement of equipment, we've had to defer. 96% of the committee budget is spent on staff salaries. That's the case in large part because we rely on highly specialized staff to carry out our mission. Employees must be able to hold top-level security clearances as a condition of employment. They must also be not just proficient, but experts in a variety of national security policies, weapons platforms, and strategically vital regions. Most importantly, Adam and I have been able to rely on them to do the Herculean behind-the-scenes work that it takes to get a bill like the NDAA passed. Like many Americans, HASC staff has gone without cost-of-living adjustments for 2 years. At the proposed 11% cut, the committee will only be able to support 61 staff, and even then we may need to implement a furlough system. We'll limp by on old equipment and rely on detailees from other agencies to carry out vital oversight work. We'll not be able to fill critical vacancies in our Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee or the Subcommittee on Military Personnel. I'm concerned that a deep cut to the committee's budget would be penny-wise but pound-foolish. Given the size and scope of the DoD budget and the opportunities that we have to find other savings, it would behoove us to be able to have a more complete staff that could help us delve into these things. Proposed cuts would triple committee functions at an important time. The defense bill we've already begun work on for fiscal year 14 will be one of the most important our committee's ever passed. This is a pivotal time for the Department of Defense. Our resources are on the decline while threats around the world are on the rise. As I said, we've already started the hearing process. We've already heard from several of our combatant commanders, and things are getting worse, not better. The committee will have a decisive role to play in a number of key areas. We will help determine how our forces withdraw from Afghanistan without giving up the gains we've made over the course of a decade. We'll help chart the military's course in dealing with the emerging cyber threat. We'll ensure that missions against the emerging al-Qaeda threat in North Africa are properly resourced. Most importantly, we'll embark on a substantial reform project. Adam and I often disagree on the appropriate amount to spend on the military, but we do agree on this. As it stands today, our military strategy, the defense budget, the DoD policy, and the threats around the world are mismatched. If we do not reform the Pentagon, we will find ourselves in a readiness crisis with a hollow force. In the absence of an FY14 defense authorization bill, the Pentagon and the White House will begin making a series of irreversible and short-sighted decisions. They'll be forced to. These decisions are aimed at resolving short-term budget problems at the expense of long-term strategic challenges. Many of us have already experienced the first taste of those choices when the Air Guard attempted to divest itself of critical equipment last year. It was the House Armed Services Committee that uncovered the flaws in the Air Force's logic, and it was the HASC through the NDAA that protected those assets with a better solution. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now recognize Ranking Member Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Brady. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I concur with everything that Buck said. I have a statement for the record, which I will submit. We do work in a very bipartisan way to produce a product. I always like to say we're one of the most bipartisan committees in Congress, and I think our National Defense Authorizing Act proves that. We come together every year to pass a substantial piece of legislation. I only want to highlight a couple of budget facts about our committee. First of all, we have the lowest ratio, I may get this mixed up, we have the fewest staff per members of any committee in Congress, the largest committee in terms of the number of members. And also our budget, and one of the key decisions you're going to have to make as you make these cuts is whether or not you cut the amount of the overall budget or the amount that the committees actually spend. I understand that there are many committees that have budgets that exceed what they spend on a year-in and year-out basis. So if you do an across-the-board cut, it will, they'll have plenty of room to work. We don't have that room because we spend right up to our budget because of the size of the committee, because of the limited number of staff. And I'm not seeing the percentage here, but I think it's somewhere over 90% of our budget is staff, are the people who actually write our bill every year. If we face an 11% cut, it will make it very difficult for us to produce the same quality product that we used to because it will cut the people who are responsible for producing that product. We don't have wiggle room on technology or stationery or travel. We just don't have much budget. It's staff dependent. And if you take this 11% across the board approach, I think that would be very, very unfair. We're hoping to get a smaller number reflected on what is actually spent so we can maintain the staff necessary to do our job, frankly. And as Mr. McKeon indicated, 51 straight years we've passed a bill. Last year, you can make an argument that the defense authorizing committees were the only committees that passed substantive legislation, given that the Appropriations Committee didn't even get there. So it's important work. We need staff to do it. We don't have much wiggle room budget-wise. I hope you'll take that into account when you're looking at how to make these numbers work. I understand you have a very difficult job.
Thank you so much, and appreciate each of you giving us some insight into the difficulties that you face. And what I would ask is we're looking at the 113th Congress. Are there any unique challenges that you see you face as a committee that you didn't face in the 112th that we need to be aware of? Yeah.
Sequestration, yes. That's been a huge cut to the Defense Department, and I alluded to that in my statement, the fact that they're having to make decisions. Now, if we pass that CR today and the Defense Appropriations Bill, that will help get through this year. But we've already started our budget process for this next year, and I guarantee you the chiefs are going to need guidance from us and from our committee and from the members of Congress in final decisions that they make. And as I also pointed out, we need very top quality staff. Most of our staff could make more if they left our committee and went somewhere else because of the training. Most of them have served in the military and retired at high ranks, but that's required for the job they have to do. We have former pilots that oversee the planes and the the services and the pilots that fly them. So I think this year, going from the defense budgets that we've had for the last 10 years to what we'll be dealing with going forward, it's crucial that we not be under-resourced at this time.
And Ranking Member Smith, do you see any unique challenges that you see as far as your workload is concerned for the 113th Congress?
I would just clarify, the chairman said sequestration. He doesn't mean the sequestration that we're dealing with here. He means the sequestration that is so going to disproportionately hit the Department of Defense as they have to scramble to figure out what to do under that. And, you know, the legislative authority that we're going to need to help them. Another responsibility of our committee is to examine reprogramming requests that come from the Department of Defense. There are going to be a lot of reprogramming requests that are going to be very, very important, and I think that would enhance the workload significantly.
I'll now recognize Ranking Member Brady for any questions he may have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm one of the most fortunate people in this Congress to be able to serve on two committees. This committee, which is totally nonpartisan, and Armed Service Committee, which I'm proud to be to serve on for the last 14 years. Again, shows this bipartisanship. I'm lucky to say I have two chairmen. They don't look at each other as ranking or chairman, whatever. They look at each other as equals, and they conduct themselves as such in the committee, in which we do appreciate it, because I think they both realize that we are also helping out our men and women that in harm's way, and we're in harm's way, and they keep their eye on the ball. I would be the only I guess comment or maybe question I would have is knowing that you can't hire more people. It's tough to do that. It's also tough to hire people with the quality and the skill set and the institution, well, the knowledge that they would need to be able to perform on Armed Services Committee. That's one thing, but the other thing I'm really concerned about is keeping the people that we have. We have an excellent staff. I work with them all day long. All the time we're there, and they do a great job. And it's hard to have them continue what they're doing when they get hired at a low rate, and because of their dedication, as the chairman stated, and then we have to cut them down, and hopefully we can keep them with the institutional knowledge and the skill sets that they have. Now we've got to ask them to take a pay cut. So I'm trying to do my best, and I know this committee will try to do their best not to make that happen, and put the men and women that are out there in harm's way and were in harm's way that are protecting our country. It would be a disservice to them. So I thank you for testifying in front of us, and would ask again if I'm sure you're running into the problem of keeping good people there, and do not want to have the decision of telling them they're gonna, now the good people you got have to take a pay cut.
I think he just was reiterating the challenge of keeping people, in such a highly skilled position as professional staff member in armed service in light of, pay cuts and downsizing and the difficulty of that. And that is our greatest challenge. As we have mentioned, our staff, drives the show. They write the bill. They, do the work. They keep us informed. And, even at their current level, they work significant hours to get this product done. The cuts that are talked about here would be devastating to our ability to continue to produce the product we want to produce.
We just lost an example. We lost a staff member who retired after 23 years. He was a retired colonel, and then he came to work for us 23 years. The knowledge that he had for personnel it'll be very, very difficult to replace, and we're not able to, at this time, to do that. And then we lost another staffer that had been with us for 20 years, a distinguished pilot. In fact, I learned after his death that he flew, as far as we've been able to verify, more combat missions over Vietnam than any other pilot, over 500. And was a great member of our committee when somebody in the military or somebody, the Pentagon would try to snow him on something very difficult to do. But again, these people are hard to find and hard to replace when we lose them, hard to keep them. I shouldn't say hard to keep them. They stay because they're very dedicated, but it is hard to get them, have the adequate time to, even though they're highly qualified, to get up to speed with how the committee works and those kind of things. It takes some time to break people in, and the way the budget works, it's very difficult to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member. I'm proud to know both of you do an excellent job. I'm proud to be on that committee. And I have no other further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Now recognize Mr. Nugent for any questions that he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as the newest member to HASC, it truly is an eye-opening experience. We take our national defense, I think a lot do just take it for granted that we'll always have the best military, one that can protect us against all threats. In my short time sitting on HASC, I see the multiple challenges that we face. We face, obviously, from within the sequester and also the continuing resolution, but the threats that we face outside, that staff that I've dealt with in this short period of time, in the briefings I receive, both classified and unclassified, it really opens your eyes, I believe, to the threats that we're facing. And so I worry about, as we move forward, if we start cutting the budget of armed services that has to oversee the great men and women that serve this country. We are the oversight capacity to do that. But also important is to make sure they have the resources available to them. For our sons and daughters that go out to fight, that they have the resources. So the question, I think, is redundant possibly, but one that is worth asking again. If we were to take the recommendation of this budget cut, actually, versus what you're requesting, how does that affect us in armed services?
Well, first of all, I didn't have the exact number earlier. 96% of our staff budget goes to salary, so it goes to the staff. So there's just no room to find savings anywhere else. We will have to cut staff. And as a new member of the committee, you can appreciate the fact that you're going to play a critical role, as everybody on that committee does, in putting together the final product. And there's a steep learning curve in understanding that the staff is there to help us to figure out how to, accomplish our priorities. And if they are not there, it reduces our effectiveness as members of the committee and reduces the effectiveness of the ultimate bill. It really, again, comes down to staff. And as I mentioned earlier, because we're so staff dependent, we spend the entire budget that we get. And so an across-the-board budget cut would be really devastating to our ability to perform those tasks.
Mr. Chairman.
We have 71 authorized slots now on our committee, but we're only filling 67. We would have to go down to 61 is our estimate right now. I'm a little unique in the fact that I've chaired 2 committees now in this Congress, and I see that there's difference between committees. Most of our leadership people that go into leadership don't become chairman. The Speaker is an anomaly. He was chairman of the Education Committee, but of just one committee. I've told him a few things about how committees function differently, and kind of surprised him. The other day we were talking, I said, we hold a hearing almost every day, full committee, and then subcommittees on top of each other. And he said, really? I said, yeah. So I appreciate that you give us the opportunity to come in and explain. Fortunately, a couple of you are on the committee and see this. But most people in the Congress don't really know. They know what their committee does, the committees they serve on, but they don't get the breadth of the whole Congress, and they don't see the difference in the committees. If you look at how much our committee is budgeted, how many staff we have, and then look at all of the committees across the gamut and see how many of them get legislation that actually is signed into law during the year, I think that is a result of key excellent staff that we have and the ability to work together. I left our committee today. We were listening to 3 of our combatant commanders to go down and vote in my other committee. I got there, and the minority had walked out of the committee. I mean, that would never, we wouldn't even think of that in our committee. And it's not the way to get things done. But I would just say that as you go through your deliberations, please look at the results at the end of the day of what the committees produce and why we do that and how we're able to do that and fund us accordingly, because our work is in the Constitution directed, and we have to carry out that responsibility. And I don't think anybody in the Congress wants us to do less than our best.
Well, I'm glad you pointed out the fact that it is in the Constitution in regards to national defense, and that has to be one of our core priorities, because without it, nothing else matters at this point, because we won't be able to do those things that are important to us, other things that we need to do to serve this country. So I want to once again thank you both for your leadership, and it's an honor to serve with both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent, and I thank the witnesses for being here and sharing your insight into what is a difficult time for us all. And I also thank our committee members who participated in these hearings for yesterday and today. And the hearing is now adjourned.